So you want to start a podcast? Well, then get to recording now.
All right, here we go. Quiet. Roll 'em.
I could review all the movies, list the games that are groovy, give them a yes or no. And my voice would be straining as I keep busy explaining if I only had a show. I would discuss all the topics, never mind the gossip, all neatly in a row. With the show I was making, I would give me all the bacon if I only had a show. Oh, wait a second. I do have a show. It's called the SuperCaZt. We're about to review Wizard of Oz. Check it out. And welcome back to the SuperCaZt. This is Steve Z, the man who put the Z in SuperCaZt. And here I am with...
the Superfosh, the man who put the super in SuperCaZt.
And we are bringing you a wonderful, a beautiful, a technicolor dream that is Wizard of Oz.
Yes, this is... the word classic is thrown around a lot, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that would disagree that this indeed is a film classic.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to have it in your top movies.
Yeah.
If you're considered to be a serious person. Even if it's not like one that you watch all the time, but
Right.
you gotta have to at least recognize its brilliance and sort of its place in film history. Because 1939 was a monster year for film. This one is my favorite from that year. I think it's much better than that other one that people like to bring up about Scarlet and all that. But
Yeah.
that's just me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that, man. And that's the thing that I think you can't forget is this movie was made in 39. And with all the special effects that was in this film, I mean, and these were probably done way harder than they would nowadays with computers and all that. So when you factor that in, I mean, this film is amazing. I mean, this film is ahead of its time, really. And that's why I think it holds up all these years later because of what they were able to achieve. Now, yeah, some of it looks dated and some of it looks kind of hokey, but I think there's a lot of stuff as we'll go through in this film that you cannot deny are pretty much amazing feats at that time.
Oh yeah, it's great craftsmanship. I mean, across the board, anything that you look into, like designing a film, as far as the costumes, the set, the direction, all of it is top notch in this film. That's why it's a classic. But of course, I didn't get that when I was a kid.
Exactly.
So my history with this film was this was the film that I watched a ton, even though it wasn't really mine.
Yeah.
It was my sister's, but I was still fascinated by this movie.
Yep.
And I don't know why. Because I was kind of scared of it, actually. Like it had this weird place in films where I'm like, that one's different.
Yeah.
And it just put me in a weird mood, but it was also a good mood. So
Right.
I watched it a lot,
Yeah.
and I don't know really why. I just really liked it. I never, if you would have asked me, do you like this movie? I might be like, I guess so. But that's kind of how it was. And
Yeah.
I watched it a few other times. I guess the most famous times I've watched it is Syncing Up to the Dark Side of the Moon, doing the Dark Side of the Rainbow. But I did not really get this movie in its full glamour and detail till the other night when I watched it in beautiful 4K.
And we will definitely get into that, and because I definitely want to hear your thoughts on that and what made this a viewing experience different. So we'll get into that in a bit. As for me, I remember watching this movie on like Saturday afternoon movie of the week kind of thing and catching on TV. But one time that I really remember watching this film is when I moved to Winfield, where I live now, in 99. One of my science teachers actually showed us this film. It was like an easy day to watch this film. And of course, there's that scene where everybody thinks somebody hangs himself when they're all walking down the yellow brick road. That's obviously been debunked and not true. But that's the thing that people were going nuts over in my class. They were like, look, somebody's hanging themselves. You can see that. And this was way before 4K. But like I said, obviously that's been debunked since then. Yeah, this film definitely is not a film I necessarily would put in my top 10 as a child, because I wasn't as exposed to it as much as maybe you and some other people. But watching it now as an adult, like I said, I was just floored at some of this effects and stuff. And the characters are great. I just love this show. Was almost going to do it as a play at Bevel, but our director had a heart attack that spring and was not able to. So we weren't able to do that show before I left. But I'm still a huge fan of this movie, and I'm really, really looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah. And I don't think we really have to say that there's going to be spoilers. I don't see how we could spoil this film for you.
No kidding.
That's my plot. Yeah. I'm just going to leave it out. I think you should probably know the general idea of what Wizard of Oz is about. Yep. I think we should just get straight to it. For me,
let's do it.
This film starts at like the long history. Of course, it was a book series originally, and then it got put on as plays and featured in vaudeville. And as far as this particular production goes, it was pretty messed up. I don't know if you looked into it. It had so many different writers. Just the directors. I mean, they went through like 4 directors in total, and it's just insane because it starts off, this one guy, he just comes into some test stuff, and then this other guy is taken in a weird direction. The studio freaks out because they're like, we are sinking tons and tons of money on this. So they bring in George Cukor, who's pretty big time. He kind of straightens the whole out because he comes in day one and is like, okay, so why do you guys have Dorothy wearing pancake clown makeup?
Yeah.
It's like, why is she doing that? That's kind of weird.
Right.
Let's just make her like a normal girl. And then he's like, okay, I think that fixes our movie. But then he has to leave to go work on Gone with the Wind. And then we get Victor Fleming in, who's doing great with it, but he has a nervous breakdown because he's directing this whole thing, and he directs most of it. But supposedly this guy named King Vildor comes and finishes it off. But Fleming in particular inherited a total, just terrible situation. I mean, because they had all these actors and stuff, and one of the original 10 men gets poisoned from the makeup, and he has to pull out. They have to do recasting. It's a bad situation. They have to work about 15-hour days, 6 days a week, and just trying to get it done. And it's a lot of people putting money into this. It's a lot of pressure on these guys, and it's a miracle that this movie kind of worked out because there was a lot of bad stuff going on. But I guess that just makes it more magical. It makes this whole movie just that much better.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've heard a lot of the backstory on this film and how it was made and the directors and everything. So I agree with you. I think that that adds to the greatness of this film because, again, there's a lot going on in this film, especially for a time period like the 1930s. I mean, you have the tornado at the beginning. Everything's practical. I mean, there's no computers at all. So everything's kind of practical and just kind of put together. And let's go ahead and talk about some of these effects just right away if you want to. And talk about that tornado scene. I mean, it's obviously, you can tell it's not a real tornado, but it's still pretty impressive for that time period.
Yeah, it's good rear projection. I mean, rear projection is hard to make it look good.
Right.
But I think they're able to just because of the lighting they're doing in that. Obviously, they're not using some cheap projector or something like that.
Yeah.
Same thing when when it projects like the Wicked Witch's face on like the ball or something.
Yes.
Or you have Annie M showing up on there and all that stuff. All that looks just great. I mean, it looks very modern, and there are definitely some shots that look kind of hokey, like the witch taking off on her broomstick and flying her through there.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a toy.
Hilarious looking, but to me, what makes it actually, I'll say that adds to the charm because it does look like it is some storybook as you're watching this, especially when they get the Oz. The matte paintings just enhance it. This looks better than any green screen crap that we have now. And this is just all painted on, and this is just a set. I know that, but the thing that I was getting into, and I noticed this time, is this is just the perfect film of collaboration. This is not like one person's vision. This is all everybody's vision going together. Everybody from the casting agents to the costume designers. I mean, they had to make 100 different Munchkin outfits. That's just impressive. And cast hundreds of midget actors, and it's just everybody buying in, all the great dancing, all the great acting. It's all coming through, and I love it.
Well, I think you got to start from the beginning, and that's L. Frank Baum's story. I mean, this is an incredible story. Obviously, there was some differences and stuff like that, but you take the basic premise of what L. Frank Baum started in the book, and then you transfer it over to film. And again, 1930s film. It's almost unbelievable that this movie was well made, and B, was this good. I mean, it's an incredible thing, and to see it on just my TV, I was like, yeah, it does look like a play, but that's not a bad thing to me. To me, that adds to the charm, as you mentioned, because I've done plays, I know how that goes, and they're much different than what you would see in a big budget film on the big screen. So normally I'd say, well, that's just kind of hokey, but as you said, and I said too, seeing that it is a backdrop, they're not really outside, they're not really in a place, they're on a soundstage, I think really adds to the film, just because of what they're trying to do and what they pull off.
And they had to do it in this way to make it look this way. They had to do it on a soundstage. I mean, the lights I saw for the Technicolor to come out and the crispness it did.
Yeah.
The lights had to make the room about 100 degrees.
Gosh.
So these actors are acting in serious heat. And it's all of that, and it's just the fact that the setting and everything makes it more dreamlike.
Right.
I mean, this whole film, I mean, obviously, Dorothy gets hit over the head, and it's supposed to be a dream, and it feels like a dream the whole way through. I mean,
It does.
and I felt that the most in the scene after they've just sang the big song "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead" over and over and over again. Just 10 minutes, you just get sucked into that, and then all of a sudden the Wicked Witch of the West appears, and it reminds me the most of like the Joker when he appears in the Dark Knight.
Yes.
She just steals the show. She's like, I'm changing everything, and she's just like a nightmare. It's like she's not supposed to fit in this frame. She's not supposed to look here, and it's just I love how they were able to make this look.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think she does a really good job. Obviously, she is known for this role, and she makes a really big impact. And I think that, some of her lines are hokey. I think her death is kind of a hokey thing. But I think overall, I think her performance in particular as the Wicked Witch is pretty much perfect as far as that part goes. So, yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's great, and it adds to the whole dreamlike thing, like I was saying. She's the nightmare portion.
Yeah.
And because some of her lines just don't make any sense, like I'll make a beehive out of you and things like that. And then at the same time, when she pulls out that hourglass and like, when this goes out, Dorothy, you're dead.
Done. You're done.
And I'm like, did she just cast a spell on her? But this is scary. I mean, just how she's the part of this movie that just pulls away from that ultimate joy of the film, but at the same time, you have to have her, otherwise you have no conflict, and it's just not that exciting of a film, really.
Yeah, you have to have an antagonist to say, okay, this is not just a frolic in the fields kind of thing. And that's the thing. Dorothy's trying to get home. I mean, what's scarier for a kid than being away from home and being, lost and that kind of thing? And one thing, I know we'll probably do some critiques later on, but one thing I did find interesting is the fact that Dorothy sometimes is scared for her life and just really, really scared. And all of a sudden, the next scene, she's just happy to be with this talking lion, kind of thing. And she's not scared of it. I mean, she was initially scared, but in like 2 seconds, she's like, "Oh, okay, you're fine. You're a scaredy cat." So it's cool. So there's a lot of things that you just kind of have to, not take so seriously, I guess, to enjoy this film, because obviously this is a fantasy film. Obviously this is a film with a lot of just crazy stuff. I mean, that horse that turns different colors. I mean, just so many things in this film that you just would never see in a real life film or real life situation. So I think that's one of the things that you have to get past in order to enjoy a film like this, is that yes, none of this is real, and it's going to look hokey at times, but it still works.
Yeah, and you have to roll with it. It makes it more fun, makes it more dreamlike. And another thing that you have to kind of adjust to as an adult is finding all the sarcasm, all the sort of satire they throw in there, because that's something that definitely went over my head as a kid.
Yeah.
There's these politicians in the Munchkin land, and you have your Scarecrow thinking he's so smart, saying some random stuff that makes nothing. It's just great, and it's I don't know. It's just the comedy, the feeling of it. I knew this would be a weird review just because my thoughts, and probably anybody that watches this movie, your thoughts are so complicated. It's hard to put it into words.
I agree with that. I mean, even when you get to the wizard, and he's obviously this phony guy, like, I didn't know how to take him. I did not, that's the one role is like, is he a good guy or a bad guy? Because on the surface, he almost looks like a bad guy with the big head and everything, and bow to me, and then you pull back the curtain, and he's just this little old man that's trying to be tough. What's your thoughts on that character, and what were your thoughts coming into the film, and then watching it last night, and have they changed?
He's just the ultimate showman. He's the ultimate flim-flam artist. I mean, just how he was as Mr. Marvel in the real world.
Yeah.
He tricked Dorothy and was making her think he was some sort of clairvoyant.
Yeah.
Same thing with here. He basically preys upon these Tin Men, this Scarecrow, makes them feel great about who they are. It's like, here you go. Here's some phony stuff. But I think that adds to the film. I think we see that he's, like I said, the satire of it. He's supposed to be that politician coming in. I can fix everything for you. Here you go. Here's a college education. Boom. Just like that.
Well, thanks.
And it's like, oh yeah, thanks. And he's just giving all this stuff. And I don't know. He's really good. I think the film wouldn't work without him because he's just that cherry on top at the end.
There's some charm to him, I think. I think that there's some charm to all these characters, but I think especially to the wizard because, on the surface he might look deceiving and kind of underhanded, but I think he has a good heart. No pun intended. Ultimately, I mean, obviously he wants to help Dorothy, and none of them like the Wicked Witch of the West. So, I mean, let's talk about her death for a second. Because, I mean, like, she gets sprayed with water, and yet she can do all these other things, like with fire and everything. She gets sprayed with water, and that's what kills her. I feel like that's almost like a rush thing. Like, how do we kill the witch? Oh, let's just throw water on her, and she'll just turn into a puddle. I mean, what are your thoughts on the witch's death? Because it's one of those things that I question about this film.
I don't really, just because it's been around for so long.
Right.
It's just part of pop culture. You know it's going to happen. I just can't really question it. I just maybe there was a bigger thing, but how are they going to do it? They're not going to have like a big fight. They're not going to pull out a sword and like defeat her. They're not going to pull out, oh, here's this magic wand. It's not Harry Potter or anything. This is just a carefree sort of adventure, and she just is the little threat that's thrown in there briefly. And at the same time, it's very rewarding when she dies, because as soon as she does, there's all these soldiers she had. They're like, she's dead, awesome, and everybody's happy. No, they didn't
like her. They were just afraid of her. But it's just funny that's what takes her down. It's just a splash of water, which I just find that amusing. Some of these, and that's the thing. I'm not trying to like bring the movie down for something like that, because normally I would. But like you said, there's just such charm in this film that even something as goofy as being doused with water, I think, works for a film like this, just because of all the other unbelievable things that you've seen, especially when you get into the Land of Oz. I mean, a talking scarecrow, a talking lion, and a talking Tin Man. I mean, it's just, it sounds ludicrous on paper, but yet they make it work in this film. And that's another thing, is they make these characters that you feel for them, especially for me. I think the Scarecrow and the Tin Man. The Lion's okay.
Yeah, let's get into our main crew. And I knew this was going to happen. I already said this earlier. This is going to be a complicated episode. It's going to be all over the place.
We are jumping all over the place, and that's pretty much on purpose.
Yeah, but the film is kind of like that. It just evokes those sort of thoughts.
Exactly.
But this group, let's start with Dorothy. We have Judy Garland as Dorothy. Gail, it's like you were saying earlier, she's almost too goody two shoes at time, but I think that's part of her act. She's supposed to be that homegirl that she wants to go out, and she's very naive. That's why they always say Dorothy looking for that yellow brick road, and she's naive. She doesn't know what the world's about, and she gets thrust into the situation where how's she gonna get through it? Well, I guess just being kind to people, and that's generally what happens. She's even kind to the witch. She feels bad for the witch, and I think that's what makes her great as a character, is how kind she is, how she sees beauty in our Scarecrow, that he's so sad on it. I mean, he's so bad on himself. He's like, I don't have a brain. I'm so stupid. This is the only job I could get is scaring crows, and I can't even do that. But she's like, it's okay. I'll take you to the wizard. We could be friends. And she just becomes friends with everybody. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Right.
That she's able to basically solve all her problems just by doing that. But at the same time, when her heart breaks, when bad things happen to her, I feel it. I think Judy Garland is great. Obviously a beautiful singer. And I can't imagine anybody ever playing this role other than her.
I remember having a tough time relating to Dorothy when I was a kid, watching this film, even in the 8th grade class that I watched this. But watching it last night, I completely agree with you. I think she is a little over the top at times, but I think that's just part of the way she was probably directed to be. I think that there is a good heart within the characters, so therefore I think there's a good heart within Judy. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing, is that she does care for even somebody as wicked and evil as the Wicked Witch. I mean, I think that shows. I think her performance is pretty pure, and her chemistry with all the other guys that she goes on the adventure with, the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow. But I think particularly with the Scarecrow, I think she probably has the best relationship with. I think she's probably closest with the Scarecrow, because he's more human, I guess, than any of the other characters that she travels with. But I think all in all, they have a lot of great rapport with each other. I just love the looks of the Scarecrow, Lion, and Tin Man. On 4K, did that really show how good they looked?
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. Like the makeup, you can see all of it. Especially Scarecrow, details I've never noticed on his clothes.
Yeah.
I'm just like, how does he keep pulling more straw out and stuffing it in his body? I was trying to figure out how the actor did that. I guess then I was like, oh, I guess he's just really skinny and he just adds this straw around him. But that actor in particular, and this is one thing I noticed about all three of them, is they all dance in their own style of their character.
Yes.
And I think that's awesome that they're that good of dancers that he can do this weird sort of falling down Scarecrow dance, and Tin Man can do this weird sort of stiff tap dance, and then your Cowardly Lion, he's just so proper, it's just, so flowery. It's just, I don't know, I love these three guys, and I don't know why as a kid that I didn't connect it like the farmhands to them.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, but going back to what you said about the Scarecrow, I actually found out the story behind that.
Okay.
Apparently, there was a scene that got cut out where it turns out that Hunk and Dorothy might be an item. So that was the thing. So that's what her and Scarecrow might have been a thing if she would have stayed in Oz.
Okay. That's interesting.
I'd
never heard that before.
Yeah.
And I never noticed their relationship until the other night when we were watching it. I was like, man, they are really good together. And it's just, there's... I'm probably reading too much into it, but that's funny that you mentioned that was sort of on the table. That's pretty interesting, especially since I had kind of put that together in my own head.
Yeah, and before we move off from Dorothy, one thing that I did read that's not... I mean, it's interesting, but not good, is they abused poor Judy Garland. And I think this is pretty common knowledge, but just in case you hadn't heard, the shoots were long, so what is their solution? Give her amphetamines. And then she's like, I can't go to sleep because I'm on this, you basically gave me speed, and I'm like 15, 16 years old. And then they're like, okay, let's give her some barbiturates. Let's make her go to sleep. So they basically are giving her ups and downers, and then whenever she obviously is kind of having some weird trip on the medicine and just laughing uncontrollably, the director goes and slaps her in the face. And It's just messed up. I mean, they ordered her own food. Like, she couldn't order her food. Like, she ordered a meal. They sent her just a bowl of soup, and she's like, okay. So they abused this girl, and I'm glad that conditions have improved for actors.
Yeah, for real.
And that's what I was saying. Like, especially the Munchkins, I think they got some abuse. The stunt lady that did the flying on the broomstick, she nearly died. This movie was messed up, but let's just concentrate on the cool stuff.
Yeah, that's still sad about Judy because I think that, she's trying her best and she's really talented. And for her to be treated like that, I think is really disappointing. But like you said, it was a definitely different time. And I'm super glad that we take better care of especially our child actors more. And that's kind of behavior is not acceptable. So, interesting.
Definitely. I guess do you have anything to say about our Munchkins and Glinda and Munchkinland in general?
I am okay. So, as we said a minute ago, it was a different time, and I'm sure the Munchkins probably went through some stuff on their the actors themselves. So it's kind of weird because I really like the Munchkins, and I like when they show up, and I think they're very interesting characters and everything. But I've heard stories about them and how that they were mistreated as well. So I'm sort of little torn from them. What about you, man?
Well, I mean, yeah, if I'm just looking at the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking in the film, and we're starting to move into our big numbers from this film. This is a showstopper, and we're basically is our first little adventure in Oz. It's like a 10-minute song. Starts off with Kansas, she says, is the name of the stars. Glinda's starting us off very nice, and then the song just picks up, and I feel the joy of these Munchkins. It's just a feast for the eyes. I mean, just when they show up, you see them hiding in the flowers and stuff, and then they come out, they're all happy, they're dancing, they're singing. It's really great, and watching it with the subtitles and with my headphones on, the lyrics are hilarious. It's a great number, and I really like even how the dancing that they pull out in it, and the forced perspective that they do it sometimes. It's really great filmmaking, really great blocking. It's just one of the best numbers of probably any musical.
Yeah, as far as their performance goes, I think they're great. I think they add a lot to the movie. I think they add a lot to the fantastical parts of the film. And I mean, to see those guys, and they're all dressed differently. They got bright colors on that, like you mentioned, kind of jump off the screen, especially nowadays. And so to that be your first interpretation of what Oz is all about, and then you have the Yellow Brick Road and all the colors, and I mean, it's a really feast for the eyes, as they say. It's just everything looks really eye-popping, and it really grabs you the moment you get there. And I think that's an intro to this world.
Yeah, and from there it keeps going. Like, that's the thing about this film. Once we get our first big musical number, it just keeps going. Like, song blends into song. They have sort of similar themes and revisits, and some, I guess we call reprises in there, and it just flows great. And I love all the scenes with our main quartet gets introduced, because they all have a good dance number in there. It's just I love this part of the film and just the great musical numbers. I think the last one that jumps to mind is, of course, whenever they show up to the Emerald City, and just everything's bustling. And like you said, I don't know how I didn't remember the horse that changes colors. I guess I just didn't look at the horse the whole time. My TV was probably not good enough. But that just blew my mind, how it just kept changing every time I look at it.
And you know how that was happened, don't you? You know how they did
Kool-Aid or something, or
it was Jello powder,
Jello,
and they put it all over, and the horse kept licking it off. Yeah. So as far you mentioned the four core people, Dorothy, and then the three characters. Do you have a favorite of the three characters? Mine is definitely Scarecrow. Who's your favorite, or can you nab one down?
I can. I think they're all great, especially when I think about the farm hands and trying to connect them to that, because that was one thing I picked up on this time, is just connecting. They're sort of their how they were acting in the real world and how they act in this, and I think they're just perfect because they all bring something to the table, and like I said, it's fun watching them dance because they all have their own style. They all have their own style of walking, and to me, it would have been so exhausting just to be that scarecrow actor, just falling down and walking. He's just like a clown at all times.
And I think that's why he is my favorite, just because he's so clownish. He's almost like a living cartoon kind of thing. You know, he just falls and he's graceful and he's hilarious. I think he looks funny. I think he's great. So that's why my personal favorite. But I agree with you. I think all three of them, plus Dorothy, work really well together, and you get a different kind of appreciation for the characters because they're so different. You know, one's kind of clumsy, one's just a steel man, and then one's a lion, and they just all work together really, really well. And this is a really good group.
Yeah, and I will say, even though he's not my favorite, because like I said, I can't really say I'm a favorite.
Yeah,
I think the Tin Man song is actually my favorite. Like his warmth that he sings with, he has a lot of heart, and then I guess that's part of the thing is like, I don't have a heart, but listen to me, how great I am at talking. That's another thing I noticed. Same thing with the lion. When he's singing his song about having much courage, he's showed a lot of courage. It's not an act anymore. And same thing whenever they go and they're going to go rescue Dorothy. He's like, I'm going to be the man. I'm going to step up. I've got courage. I'm a big bad lion.
Exactly.
And I just like that all of them get to kind of go against their lack of abilities. And I guess before we shut the door on the music and stuff, we gotta talk about this. The most beautiful scene in probably the whole film. Dorothy's sitting on the farm. She's longing for something new to escape this place where people ignore her. Someplace beyond the rainbow.
It's a beautiful song. I think it's really well written, and I think Judy Garland. This song has obviously been covered over and over again in the ever how many years this has been out. But I think this is definitely the quintessential version. I think it doesn't get any better than what she does. I like her voice. I think it's a really good voice. I think it's very soothing. I think there's a warmness to it. And it's one of those songs that you've heard over and over again, but then when you watch it in the context of this film, it really just grabs you. Or at least it did for me last night watching this film. It just really put you back into the mindset of a child. I mean, when you were young, you had dreams. You wanted to do different things. And, you know, we're adults now, so we almost forget that innocence. We almost forget what it's like to wonder what's over the rainbow, what's my destiny, and all this kind of thing. And I think that's what this song does really, really well. And to put it in this film, I think it's just a masterful job by the director and the editor and all the people that worked on this film to make this song, which is beautiful, it's a classic, work in a film like this. So yeah, it really touched me in a way I don't think it had before. So it was definitely one of the highlights of this film and watching it last night. How about you, man? What's your thoughts?
I mean, just ditto. I think her voice is beautiful. She's got such command over it. I mean, like, you can tell a good singer whenever they can enunciate certain vowels, certain syllables, and just kind of like bend it and do whatever they want to with it. And she definitely has the command of her voice. She is not straining to sing. It just comes out naturally and beautifully. And this song in particular, like you were saying, it's great by itself, but in the context of the film, it just lifts up that whole first part that much more. And it makes it that much more satisfying whenever just the music is playing when she's walking through Oz. And it's like, this is over the rainbow. This is what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah, and I mean, and you got to think about it. She's a kid. She's like 15, 16 years old, and she's just booming her voice during this. And there's still some softness to it, and there's just elegance, and it's an amazing performance. And again, I think it's something that you can't really take for granted with all the other stuff that's going on in this film.
And we've already been talking about the sets and the costumes. It's, to me, just how the matte paintings, just everything they've done, all the costumes, all the sets, is just immaculate. I just can't believe. I mean, if we did this now, they would have just done it on green screen.
Right.
And it does not have the same magic. It does not have the same charm.
No, it's a very primitive set, obviously. And like I mentioned, it almost looks like a play set, that you would do a play on. but this came from the stage, obviously. So I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that it adds to the charm of the film, and some of those paintings are just amazing to look at. I mean, just you almost think for a second they are outside or somewhere on location, just because of the detail, especially on these newer TVs. So I give a lot of credit to the production designers and the painters and everybody that worked on the sets. I think for that time period specifically, did an outstanding job for what they were trying to do for this film.
Yeah. And the last big thing I want to talk about is... Actually, I have two big things I want to talk about.
Okay.
Just on the technical side, while we're still talking about that. I think the camera movements are amazing. I'm just picturing how they were doing it the whole time through. It's like they're using a boom arm a lot of the time. And it's, I guess it's the old-timey ones where they had to have a guy sitting on like a... sort of like a cherry picker, and just... they got the camera on there, they're rolling... and the actors are just dancing toward the camera and it just weaves around. It's just so many fluid, sweeping shots that I'd never seen in a musical prior to this. Definitely in the 1950s with the Gene Kelly stuff, they kind of duplicate it, but early stuff, this just blew everything out of the water when it comes to like camera, cinematography, everything involved.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think some of the shots, and I guess I hadn't paid attention in other viewings, but some of the shots were just blowing my mind just because of how they were able to get some of the shots and how they were able to film, especially in the numbers with songs and stuff. You know,
the camera dances with those.
Yeah, exactly. I thought those were really, really good because there's a lot of movement going on and there's a lot of things that they could miss, but I think that they did a really good job of showing the entire thing and just really letting the actors anyway give a good performance of each of those songs. And as you mentioned earlier, they're different dance styles, and I think the way they shot the different songs was different, so kudos to that for sure.
Yeah, so finally, what's your big takeaway from this film? What does it mean to you?
I think this is one of these films that people will be watching 100 years from now. I think that this will be or even 1,000 years, I don't know. I think this is just one of those films that you don't have to be a huge fan of it, and my father-in-law is a huge fan of this film. I think it's his favorite, one of his favorites. So I know that there's a lot of love for this film for older people and people even before our time. But I think if you do like film, you have to appreciate what this film does. Again, we talked about it over and over of, this is a film in the 1930s, not even in the 50s, in the 30s. And they're able to do what they do with the color, just the magnitude of this film. I mean, we use blockbuster a lot now, and that wasn't used back then, but I think this qualifies. I think that this is sort of a blockbuster-y type film with a lot going on, and yet it all fits, and it all works, and the performances are great, the music is obviously fantastic, and it with everything going on in the world, it was just nice to just have a hour and a half, 2 hours to just enjoy something like this. So if for some reason you've not seen this movie, do yourself a favor and go watch it, because it's just one of those films that I think whether you're a child or an adult thinking about your childhood, I think everybody can relate to this film in one way or another.
Yeah, and for me, adding to the ending here is yes, it has all the stuff we've been talking about, all the costumes, everything fitting together, but it doesn't work if you don't feel for the characters, and that's what I feel is what it's trying to say. Yes, it's so complicated, like we said, there's so many interpretations. Like, I didn't even know about the populist interpretation, all the political stuff behind it. I didn't care about that, but I definitely saw it this time. But to me, in its heart, is the messages as it ends. It's like, truly there is no place like home. Everybody's been there where, yeah, you think the grass is greener, and then sure enough, it's not. This is a age-old lesson, and it's fun seeing Dorothy learn this. And at the same time, we feel this journey with her. We go through these fun, whimsical times. At the same time, we feel how crushed she is whenever Aunt Em is crying, or whenever she realizes there's no way I can go back home. And then she wakes up in her own bed and how happy she is. And I just love Judy Garland's performance there at the end. That's why this film is timeless. It's all the pieces working together, but at the same time, it hits you almost on a subconscious level. And I think that's why we've kind of rambled through this whole thing, is because it's such a complicated, such a weird, and such a unique film that I don't know. It's hard to put into words, and that's kind of how I'm going to end it. Is just you have to watch it again. You will always gain new understanding for it, and yeah, it might not be your cup of tea, but hopefully you can appreciate it on some level.
Agreed, 100%,
and if
man.
you can't appreciate it normally, put on Dark Side of the Moon, watch it that way. It's pretty fun.
Oh yeah.
But
all right, man. Well,
I already mentioned it. This 4K, one of the best 4Ks ever. Go out and get it. Even if you don't have a 4K yet, you can still watch the Blu-ray. Just go do it.
Sounds good, man.
But anyway, Toto, we're home. And this is my room. And you're all here. And I'm not going to leave here ever again. Because I love you all. And, oh, Annie M., there's no place like home.
And here we are, we're finishing up another great episode of this SuperCaZt. We really thank you for joining us. It was a lot of fun. We love talking about this movie. And we highly recommend that you get involved, looking for us on social media so you can stay in the know, because we definitely got some stuff down the pike and we want you to be a part of it. We want you to know what's up. We got some Tarantino stuff coming up again. We're also having a movie I want to talk about a lot coming up later this month, Highlander.
Oh boy.
Plus, we will do our Christmas tradition of revisiting the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So
I can't wait for that.
Keep looking for new stuff. It's all happening here on the SuperCaZt. We thank you all for listening, as always. We love the new subs. Thanks for coming out. See you next time on the SuperCaZt.